is the hukm on Qada prayers? And yeah, what's the hukm on Qada prayers? Making of prayers that you last.
So he asked, I'm sorry, now we. So he asked what the ruling is on prayers that need to be made up. When you make up your prayers, Qada. And so what he's asking is that since, I assume you're asking about obligatory prayers. So there are some prayers that are obligatory and there's some prayers that are not obligatory. Do you guys, do you know the difference between prayer and supplication? Do you know the difference? No. This is an important question. It's a subtle question. There's prayer and then there's supplication. So someone asks you, like, why do Muslims pray 5 times a day? You know why many people ask that question? They're amazed by that. Because in Western culture, there's no difference between what they call prayer and supplication. Prayer is salah. Supplication is dua. You know the difference? So for example, do you need to have wudu to make supplication? No. You need to make wudu to pray salah. Yeah. And when you make dua, when you supplicate, does it have to be in Arabic? No. You have to have wudu? No. It's very informal. This is when you call on God. You talk to Him, you have a conversation with God. That's dua, supplication. Dua comes from the Arabic word which means to call. You're calling on God. Salah is prayer. Salah is something you do 5 times a day. So when someone asks you in the West, oh my God, why do you pray 5 times a day? Like, why is that like this? Why the number? What they're asking you is, they're amazed by that because they don't have a difference. They don't have a prayer like Christians, for example, people from the Western societies, cultures, which are typically based in Christianity. They don't have a salah. They just have supplication. So it's hard for them to understand why it is that we would pray 5 times a day. That'd be like saying, make dua 5 times a day for us. You say, why 5? Why not 6, 7? That's the problem there. For us, we have a problem also though, because we don't know the differences between prayer and supplication in the sense that we don't really seem to understand in general what it means to have a relationship with God. So what we do is we pray salah, but we don't know how to make dua. We don't know how to supplicate. We don't know how to call upon Him. The problem that what I'm coming down to is about these making up of prayers. There's an attitude about why we miss prayers in the first place. So one of the things that happens is, a guy told me one time, he said very frankly, he said, Abdul Latif, I don't really pray that much. So I said, okay, may Allah make it easy. He said, you know, the thing is, the reason why I don't pray that much is because I'm not getting anything out of my prayer. He said, I am not getting anything out of my prayer. So I thought to myself, well, whether or not you're getting anything out of your prayer or not, it doesn't really matter. Prayer, the salah is Allah's right. It's not your right, it's Allah's right. And whether or not you can get something out of the prayer or not is not the question. The question is, are you giving God His right to it? If you want to get something out of it, it's called dua. See the difference? The reason why you and I are not getting anything out of our ibadah in that way is because we're just making it's a slight misunderstanding, but it has big consequences. Most of us don't know how to make dua. When someone says make dua for me, you say, oh, okay, Allah make it easy, that's it. And you say, like, you know, I need something, what do I do? Make dua. Well, what do you mean make dua? Just ask God. What do you mean ask God? I don't know, it's kind of like when you ask your mom, but it's just bigger. Just ask big, you know, and ask with more confidence, knowing that He can do it all. Whereas the salah is not made for that. Salah is not made, unless you're doing a type of salah. So you have salatul hajjah, where you're asking God through your salah. You can do that, but typically salah is Allah's right. It's not yours and my right. So when we miss the prayer, what we're saying is, Yeah. When we miss dua, what we're saying is, my relationship with you isn't that great. When we're missing the prayer, not only are we saying that, but we're saying, Allah, I don't want to give you your rights. So it's serious. Since it's like that, we have to do qada, we have to make up. This is what he's asking about, the obligatory prayers. Now, the thing is that, as for myself, I adhere to the Maliki school of Imam Malik. So the rules of qada differ slightly within the schools. I can tell you what's going on in the Maliki school in general, then but I encourage you to look into your own. And if you don't have a school, then that's a different topic altogether. But for us, the jurisprudence that's involved is typically that if you miss a prayer on purpose, you have to make the qada up, you have to make up that prayer immediately. It's so serious that you have to make it up in such a way that, let's say that you said, it's Fajr time, and you wake up for Fajr and you're laying there in your bed and you're like, Dad, I don't know. You go back to sleep. When you wake up, as soon as you wake up, you have to make the Fajr prayer up immediately. If you don't, and then you pray Dhuhr, your Dhuhr's not even accepted. In the sense that you have to make up things in order. So first you have to pray Fajr, then you pray Dhuhr. So let's say you miss Fajr and you miss Dhuhr, and it's time for Asr, you say, I'm going to pray Asr. You have to pray Fajr, then Dhuhr, then Asr. Why is it like this? Because it's Allah's rights. It's Allah's rights. If you miss a prayer by accident, there's certain ways where you miss a salat that's not counted against you as a sin. So, for example, if you oversleep, this happens a lot of times with our phones. If you have it's Fajr time, you have your little iPhone. Let's say you got your little iPhone and you're not really all that great at gadgets, and you don't know how to set your alarm. It's too complicated somehow. It's just like I don't know what I'm doing. And you push the wrong buttons and you put AM instead of you put PM instead of AM. You sleep through the Fajr prayer. You wake up. You're really upset about that. That's not considered to be a sin against you. And that qada is slightly different, meaning that you make that up. If you don't make it up in order, these kinds of things, you don't make it up immediately. There's more leniency because you weren't trying to break God. You weren't trying to not give God His rights. So that's typically the idea. But understand the reason why a lot of people are having problems with their prayers is because they don't understand the weight of it, and they think of salat more like dua. Well, I pray when I feel good. I pray in Eid. Yeah, but there's a misunderstanding. A lot of people it's not that a lot of people are bad people. It's just they really don't understand some of the more basic things about Deen.
How would you go about if you say, for example, someone wasn't practicing for a while and he's missed how many prayers before because he said it has to be in order? How would you go about that?
Yeah, so the question is that, like, if you're missing years, this question is saying that if you miss years of salat, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, obviously, you're going to have to figure out a way to make them up before the next Dhuhr prayer. Or pray really fast. In those kind of situations, there's two different ways to go about that. That I know of. One is that you literally you're not allowed to pray you have to make them up, and you're not allowed to pray any of the non-obligatory prayers, basically. You have to, and you spend your leisure time making up prayers. But most people can't do that, to be honest. Most people they get burned out. And sometimes I've seen people try to do that, and it ends up making them miss more salat because they just get worn out. There's a reason why they weren't praying salat, because their imam was weak in the first place. So then they come back, they want to come back to Allah and come back to practicing, and then someone hits them with that, and they're like, oh man. For a few 2 or 3 days they're into it, and the next thing you know, they're back in the pub or something, man. Just forget it, man. God knows my intentions. Yeah. And the other way that I've heard Sheikh Abdul Latif mention this one is to take in the Hanbali position, which is it's a bit more. It's sad. This one, I think it's sad that basically if you leave salat, you've left Islam anyway, and so you don't have to make up your prayers because you weren't Muslim in the first place. But that one's harsh. That one's harsh. It's obviously kind of better because it makes you say, okay, then let me just start over again. But you don't want to think about that period of time in your life when you weren't even in Islam. But this is Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal's position. This is not a Maliki position or a Hanafi position.
Yeah.
It's harsh. You know, nobody. But there's something to be said for that. You know, when Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he was martyred, when he was dying, they tried to get him to take it easy. He had blood coming out of his body, big amount of blood coming out of his body. They told him to take it easy, and he said, no, I've heard from the Messenger of Allah that he who has no salat has no deen. And so even though he was dying, he still prayed his salat. So there's something to be said for that. You know, he who has no salat has no deen. That's where the idea comes from. So there's two ways to go about that. I know there's two ways to go about that. Yeah. If you have a lot of what they call himma, aspiration, you know, then make up those prayers. Do it. But if you find yourself just kind of floundering and not really doing a very good job, then know that, you know, Allah's got you, as they say. You know, He's got you, but you gotta remember, you gotta realize that you were in a really bad place. And that the tawbah that you make from being in that place should probably be enough to push you forward. I don't know. As for me, I don't ever want to go. I mean, I'm a convert or revert or whatever you want to call me. So, you know, I don't ever want to go back to that. And the idea of thinking that I wasn't, I mean, alhamdulillah, I never did that kind of thing, but just the idea of it, put some hot coals in my eyes first. I mean, don't. You know, be emphatic.